There is a specific kind of dismissal that does not use words. The dismissal that arrived as a sound, as the specific, easy, this does not warrant serious treatment sound of a laugh aimed at something a person had said, not because the thing was funny, but because the person laughing had decided in the moment of hearing it that it did not require the respect of being taken seriously. This kind of dismissal was, in certain ways, more complete than the word kind. A word could be argued with. A word occupied the space of language and could be met there in language with a response that occupied the same space. The laugh evacuated that space. The laugh said, "What you said does not even rise to the level of requiring a response." It said, "I can consume this in a sound and move on." It said this without any of the vulnerability that an actual position required, without putting anything on the line, while simultaneously taking something from the person who had said the thing, taking from them the dignity of having said something worth taking seriously. This is a story about that kind of laugh. About a woman named Lorraine who had been doing one of the hardest jobs available to a human being for 19 years, and who said, on a Family Feud stage in the third round, an answer to a survey question that came from 19 years of doing that job, and that was, as the afternoon would eventually confirm in several ways, the most accurate answer given by anyone in the room that day. And about her husband Terence who laughed at it, not cruelly, not with malice, with the specific, easy, this is adorably naive quality of someone who had decided the answer, did not take the survey seriously enough, and who expressed this with the laugh before he had thought about what the laugh revealed. And about what Steve Harvey did when he heard the laugh, which was to stop. Completely. Not the various forms of stopping he had produced on his stage before. The specific, total, I have decided that silence is the right instrument quality of someone who had heard something, and who understood that the right response was not a word, but a room held in silence for the full, uncomfortable. This is what I am naming length of time it took for everyone in the room to understand what had just happened and what it was. He held the silence for 12 seconds, and then he said one sentence. And the one sentence was the last word on the subject, not because it ended the conversation, but because it named the thing so precisely that the naming was the thing. And after the naming, the thing had a shape it had not had before, and the shape was going to be in the room for everyone who had been in the room for the rest of whatever came next. Hit that like button and subscribe right now before we go any further, because this channel is here for exactly these stories, for the laughs that get their silence. And we come back with one every single week. Now let us talk about Lorraine. Lorraine Beckett was 51 years old and was a palliative care social worker at a major hospital system in Cincinnati, Ohio, who had been doing the work for 19 years, and who was, in the way that the people she had worked alongside and the families she had been with described her, exactly the right person for the specific thing the work required. Palliative care social work was the work of being with people who were dying and with the families of people who were dying. Not in the specific, dramatic, this is the last moment way of the movies, but in the ongoing, day by day, what does this person need right now quality of accompanying someone through the process of moving toward the end of their life. She helped patients and families understand what was happening and what choices were available and what the choices would mean. She helped people say the things they needed to say to each other before they could not say them. She helped people who had been unable to be in the same room with each other arrive in the same room before the window closed. She sat with people at 2 in the morning when the sitting was the thing that was needed and when there was nothing else to do. She was warm in the specific, full, I am entirely here quality, not the warm quality of a room made comfortable, but the warmer quality of a room made honest, the quality of someone who had learned from 19 years of sitting with people at the end that honesty was the form of warmth that the end required, and that she had been giving it for 19 years with the specific, patient, entirely present quality that the giving required. She was direct. She was in the specific way of people who had been present for the full range of human experience for 19 years, without illusions, not cynical. The opposite of cynical, the specific. This is what people are, and it is enough quality of someone who had seen people be terrible and wonderful in the same week, and who had found, in the full range, not disappointment, but a particular, durable kind of faith. She had been married to Terence for 22 years. Terence Beckett was 54 and was a marketing director for a consumer goods company in Cincinnati who had spent 26 years building brands, understanding what people wanted, and how to make them feel the thing that made them want the thing, and how to make the feeling reliable and repeatable. He was sharp and warm and professionally successful, and had the specific, We can make anyone want this quality of someone who had spent 26 years understanding the psychology of desire. He was funny, genuinely, easily, warmly funny, in the specific way of people who moved through the world noticing the absurd and who had, in 26 years of professional life organized around getting people to feel things, developed a comprehensive and accurate model of what was funny and what wasn't. He was also in the specific way that some professionally successful people developed, accustomed to being the most entertaining person in the room and to the room confirming this, and had developed, without examining it, as the specific accumulated, nobody ever told me to stop doing this product of being the most entertaining person in the room for 26 years. The habit of deploying the laugh at moments when the laugh established his read as the superior read. It was not a cruel laugh. It was a performed laugh, the laugh that said, I have processed what you said and I have located it in the comedy category, and the comedy category means it does not need to be taken seriously, and this is my response. He had aimed it at Lorraine over 22 years in various rooms in various forms and had not examined what the aiming cost. On the Family Feud stage, the aim was visible in a way that the smaller rooms had not made visible. Their son Devin, 24, was in his second year of a social work master's program in Columbus. His mother's warmth and his own, entirely proprietary. This is what I believe about the world quality, which was organized around the same conviction as his mother's work, which was that people in the hardest moments of their lives deserved the specific, full, nothing less than everything quality of attention that the hardest moments required. He was here because he was always where his mother was, and because he had, in the weeks since the application was submitted, the specific. I know both of my parents' quality of a young man who had been watching the dynamic for 24 years, and who was, in the weeks before the taping, in the specific. Something is going to happen quality of someone who knew what rooms produced when both people were fully in them. Lorraine's sister Paula, 48, was a registered nurse who had the warm, direct. I have been watching my sister do this work for 19 years quality, and who was here because Lorraine had asked, and because you showed up for your sister. And Lorraine's colleague and closest friend Marcus, 49, who was the palliative care chaplain at the same hospital and who had been beside Lorraine in the work for 14 years, and who was the person, outside of her patients' families, who best understood what the work was and what it required and what it produced in the person who did it. The application had been submitted by Paula, who had submitted it because she had thought her sister deserved an afternoon organized around who her sister was, and because she had thought, in the specific, I know my sister, and I know what she deserves quality of a sister who knew her person, that a large room organized around the excellent version of Lorraine was a large room worth arranging. The pregame was warm. Steve Harvey moved through both families with the customary attention and arrived at Lorraine with the genuine, following quality he brought to people who had something real to tell him. He asked about the palliative care work. She described it with the warm, plain, this is what I actually do quality of someone who had spent 19 years watching people not know what palliative care was and who had developed from the watching the clearest available description of it. I help people use the time they have. He said, what does that mean in practice? She said, it means I am in the room at the part of a person's life when what matters has become very clear, and I try to help them do the things that matter while they still can. He said, the things that matter. She said, different for every person. He said, what do most people want? He said it in the genuine, I want to know quality. She received the question in the full, unhurried, I have been asked a version of this many times quality of someone who had been asked many versions of it and who always answered honestly. She said, most people want to know that they were known. She said, not famous, not successful. Known, she said, they want to know that the people they loved knew who they actually were. He said, known by the people they loved. She said, yes. He said, and what do the people around them want? She said, the same thing. She said, they want to know they were known by the person who is leaving. He said, the knowing goes both ways. She said, always, he said, and your job is to help them get there while they can, she said. My job is to help them know they need to get there and to help them do it and to be in the room when they do. He said, for 19 years. She said, yes. He said, what does 19 years of that teach you? She said, it teaches you that love is not the feeling. He said, what is it? She said, it is the practice of seeing a specific person clearly and saying what you see. He said, the saying is the practice. She said, the saying is the whole thing. Most people do it too late. He received this. He was quiet for a moment. He said, I'm going to remember that. He moved on. He asked Terrence about himself. Terrence described the marketing work with the warm, organized, I understand what makes people want things quality. Steve Harvey asked, What is it like to be married to someone who does the work she does? Terrence said. It is, he said it in the warm, I am about to say something funny quality, he said. It is interesting. He said, she brings a certain, he said it with the warm, performative, I am crafting the observation quality, she brings a certain gravity to evenings. He said it with the warm laugh that was also a deflection. He said, my work is about making people feel good. He said, her work is about, he said, well, he said it with the laugh again. He said, it is different. He said, she is better at the hard conversations. He said it in the warm, this is a compliment framed as an observation voice. Steve Harvey received it. He noted the laugh. He noted the way the laugh arrived every time Terrence got close to naming the work directly. He filed it. He moved on. He was going to come back to it. The game began. Lorraine was excellent. The palliative care social workers, what does this person actually need quality, applied to survey questions with the warm, direct. I have been reading what is actually true in the room quality of someone who had been inside the full range of what people actually said, and felt and needed for 19 years, at the part of their lives when the things that were not true fell away. She was right at the rate of someone whose professional standard was that the thing they observed was accurately observed, and who had applied this standard for 19 years to everything. The rate of someone whose relationship with what was actually in the room was, of all the people on the stage, the most comprehensive and the most honest. Terrence was sharp and warm and right at a high rate with the marketer's comprehensive model of what people responded to. Devin was precise and warm. Paula was direct and right. Marcus had the 14-year colleague's complete understanding of what Lorraine saw and how she saw it applied to survey questions with the warm, beside her the whole time accuracy. Third round, second question. The survey category, things that remind you what matters. It was a warm category, the kind that the survey produced in the general population's warmth. Family, health, nature, the list of the universal things. Both families answered the first several questions with the warm, recognizing answers. The board filled with the expected range. Lorraine buzzed in. She gave her answer in the warm, plain, direct voice that was simply her voice. The voice she used in every room because she only had one voice, the one that had been shaped by 19 years of only one kind of room mattering. She said, when someone says something they have never said before. She said it the way she said everything. She said it and waited. Terrence laughed, not loudly, not cruelly. With the specific, easy, this is adorably beside the point quality, the laugh that said, you have answered a survey question about universal reminders with something too personal, too narrow, too specifically you, the laugh that said I have processed this and it has not landed in the serious category. He laughed in the warm, deflecting, she is always like this way. He looked at the board. He said with the laugh still in it, that is very Lorraine. He said it as the fond, performed, this is charming but off-base observation. He was looking at the board. He was not looking at Lorraine. The board confirmed her answer. It was number one with 44 responses. 44 people in the survey, when asked what reminded them what mattered, had said, when someone says something they have never said before. The board lit up. Number one, 44 responses. Terrence's expression adjusted in the specific O quality. He received the confirmation. Steve Harvey stopped. He stopped in the way he had never stopped before, not the gradual following the thread stop, not the immediate this requires removal stop. The complete total I have decided the silence is the right instrument stop. He stood at the center of the stage and he did nothing for 12 seconds. He did not look at the board. He did not look at the audience. He looked at Terrence. Quietly, completely, with the full, direct, I am going to hold this silence for the correct length quality of someone who had chosen silence as the specific, most accurate response to what had just happened and who was holding it for the length it required. The room was in it. 300 people in the full, silent, what is happening quality. The board behind them showing number one with 44 responses. Terrence receiving the silence with the increasing, uncomfortable, I am in this quality of someone who had been the most entertaining person in the room for 26 years, and who was now in a room where silence was doing more than any laugh had done. 12 seconds. Then Steve Harvey said one sentence. He said it in the quiet, flat, entirely plain voice of someone reporting a fact. He said, you laughed at the woman who knows what people say right before they run out of time to say it. He said it simply, without embellishment, without performance. As the accurate description of what had just happened, the identification of the specific, precise irony in the form of a statement of fact, said in the voice that gave the statement its full weight. He said it and then he was quiet. The room received it in the specific, full, this is the sentence quality of a room that had just been given the exact right sentence for the thing it was in. Not the applause of approval, not the laugh of recognition. The specific, gathered, unanimous silence of a room that was absorbing a sentence that was completely and entirely accurate, and that required the absorbing before anything else could happen. Terrence was very still. He had received the sentence in the full, going somewhere quality, the specific quality of a man for whom something had arrived in the specific place where things arrived when they were true and pointed at, and when you were the person they were pointed at, and when you had been in a room for 22 years with the person who had been living the thing the sentence named, and whom you had been laughing at for 22 years without examining the laugh. He was in it. He was in the full, I am in the description quality. Not managing it, in it. He said nothing for a moment, he was in it. Steve Harvey did not rush him. He held the room the way he held rooms, fully without intruding, giving the center to what was happening in the center. He waited. Terrence said, I didn't think about what the laugh was saying. He said it in the quiet, flat, I am accounting for this voice. I do that. He said, I have been doing that for a long time. He said, when she says something, when she brings the work into a room, I deflect it, with the laugh. He said, because the work is, he stopped. He said, I do not know how to be in the room with what she knows. He said it in the plain, honest, I have just understood this voice of someone arriving at something. He said, she is in those rooms every day. I do not know how to be in those rooms. He said, so I laugh. He said, so it does not have to be a room I am in. He said it in the flat, I have just said the true thing voice of a man who had found the true thing here in the large room when it had not been findable in the smaller ones. He looked at Lorraine. He said, I have been laughing so I did not have to be in the room with what you know. He said, I am sorry. He said it simply, as the flat accountable, I am accounting for this statement, not the performed sorry. The flat, this is the honest account sorry. He said, I have been doing it for 22 years. He said, I have been laughing at the person who knows what people say right before they run out of time to say it. He used Steve Harvey's sentence. He said it back in his own voice applied to himself. He said, that is what I have been doing. He said, I want to stop. Lorraine received this. She received it in the full, not managing quality of a woman who had been receiving the laugh for 22 years and who was now in the room where the laugh had been named and accounted for, and who was in the specific, full, both things simultaneously quality, the pain of 22 years of the laugh and the full, present receiving of the account. She was in it. She was entirely in it. She said, yes. She said it in the quiet, plain voice. She said, I know. She said, I know you did not know what it was. He said it in the warm, direct, this is the accurate account voice. I know you were not trying to dismiss me, she said. The dismissal arrived without the intention, she said, and it arrived in every room. She said it in the flat, this is what happened voice. For 22 years, she said, I have been bringing what I know into our rooms and you have been laughing so you did not have to be in the room with it. She said, and I kept bringing it. She said it in the warm, direct, this is simply true voice. Because the thing I know is, the time to be in the room is before you run out of time to be in the room. She said, I have been waiting for you to be in the room. She said it in the warm, patient, this is the account voice. For 22 years I have been waiting. She looked at him. She said, you are in the room now. She said it in the warm, plain, this is the fact voice. This is the room, you are in it. She said, what do you want to say? Terrence received this. He received it in the full, not deflecting, I am in this room quality, the specific, entire absence of the laugh, the quality of someone who had been shown exactly what the laugh had been and who was not doing it anymore, who was in the room without the laugh, for the first time in 22 years, being in the room with what she knew. He said in the quiet, certain, I have found the thing voice. I am proud of you. He said it simply. He said, not for the work, for what the work requires of you. He said, I have never said that to you. He said it in the flat, acknowledging, I have just understood this voice. I have never said the thing that the work requires of you is extraordinary. He said, you sit with people at the end, you help them say the things that matter before they run out of time. He said, you have been doing this for 19 years. He said, I have been deflecting it with the laugh for most of those years. He said, I am not going to deflect it anymore. He said it as the commitment. In the flat, certain, this is what I am going to do voice. He said, I want to be in the room with what you know. He said, starting now. He said, I am in the room. He said it in the direct, plain, I mean this voice. I am here. Lorraine looked at her husband. She was in the full, receiving this quality of someone who had waited 22 years for the thing she had just received, and who was in the full, both things simultaneously quality of the receiving, the weight of the 22 years and the full, warm, present reality of the thing she had been waiting for having arrived. She said, I know. She said it in the warm, plain, I received this voice. She said, I have always known you could be. She said it in the specific, direct, I have been waiting quality. I have always known that room was available to you. She said, you just needed to find it. She said it in the warm, patient, there it is voice of someone who had been doing her work for 19 years and who had learned from the doing that people could get to the rooms they needed to get to if the conditions were right and if they were willing. She said, the conditions were this room. She said, you were willing. She said it simply. That is enough. She looked at Steve Harvey. She said, thank you for the silence. He said it in the direct, warm, this was the right instrument voice. That was the right instrument. Steve Harvey received this with a quiet warm, "This is the highest compliment I could receive quality." He said, "I learned it from you." He said, "You said love is the practice of seeing a specific person clearly and saying what you see." He said, "I tried to see what was in the room clearly." He said, "You told me what to see." He said it in the simple, honest voice. He said, "Let's play Family Feud." He said it in the warm, forward-moving, "The game is the right next thing" voice. The game resumed with the full, present, hands-are-free quality of a team that had been somewhere, and that was doing the next thing with the weight of the somewhere making the doing different from what it had been. Lorraine played with the complete, warm, all the attention available quality of someone who had said the thing, and who had been heard saying it, and whose hands were therefore entirely free. She was extraordinary, the palliative care social worker's full precision in full deployment, right at the rate of someone who had been observing what was actually in rooms for 19 years, and who brought this to every question with the warm, direct, "What is actually here" quality. She was right at the rate that produced the specific, "This is what being entirely in the room looks like" quality. Terrence played with a different attention than he had before, without the laugh in the specific, "I'm in the room now" quality of someone who had stopped using the deflection, and who was therefore more present, and who was, in the being more present, better at the game. Devon was sharp and warm and right with the social work student's comprehensive. What does this person actually need accuracy? Paula was direct and right. Marcus had the 14-year colleague's comprehensive knowledge applied fully. The Beckett family won the main game. Fast money. Lorraine walked to the podium without discussion. She walked to it with the 19-year walk, the walk of someone who had been in the hardest rooms available for 19 years, and who had found, in the being in them, the specific, grounded, "I know what I am doing" quality of someone whose competence was built on the most real possible foundation, which was the foundation of having been present for the full range of what mattered. Steve Harvey looked at her from across the stage. He said, 19 years. He said, "The saying is the whole thing. Most people do it too late." He said, and 44 people in the survey said, "What reminds me what matters is when someone says something they have never said before." He said it tonight. He said it to the room. He said, "In this room," he said it. He looked at Lorraine. He said, "Let's see what 19 years of knowing what people say right before they run out of time looks like in 20 seconds. Lorraine said, "Start the clock." She answered 5 Family Feud survey questions in 20 seconds with the warm, precise, entirely accurate intelligence of a palliative care social worker, who had spent 19 years in the rooms where everything that was not true had fallen away, and who had built, from those rooms, the most honest and most complete model of what people actually said, and felt and needed and valued that the stage had been offered. The model of someone who had been inside the full range of human experience at its most concentrated, and who had found in that range not a theory of what people were but a practice of what they needed, which was to be seen and known and heard. She was right. 4 answers were number 1. Her 5th answer arrived at 15 seconds in Lorraine's voice, the warm, direct, "I have been in this room and I know what is here" voice, and was number 1. Marcus scored 91 points in the second seat with the 14-year colleague's full knowledge. Combined total, 281 points, $20,000. Steve Harvey brought the check. He held it and said, 44 people said when someone says something they have never said before, she said it. It was number 1. He said it in the flat, "This is the record" voice. And then her husband said something he has never said before. He said, "In this room." He said, "Tonight." He held the check between them. He said, $20,000 for the saying. He said, "For the specific, true, finally said thing." He said, "And for the silence that made it possible." He gave the check to Lorraine. She held it. She looked at Terrence. He was looking at her with the full, present, "I am in the room" quality, not performing it. In it. She said in the warm, direct, "This is what I want to use this for" voice. "I want to put some of this toward the bereavement program." She said it to Steve Harvey. "We have families who come after the person is gone. They need support. We have been trying to fund a full-time position." She said, "This helps." She said it in the plain, "This is what the money is" for voice. Terrence said, "What is the rest of the program? Tell me." He said it in the direct, "I am asking now" voice, the new voice, the in-the-room voice, the no-laugh voice. She looked at him. She said, "I will tell you all of it." She said it in the warm, settled, "This is the arrangement" voice. "Tonight." She said, "All of it." He said, "Yes." He said, "I want to hear all of it." He said it in the plain, "I mean this" voice. "Starting tonight." Steve Harvey looked at both of them. He said, "The time to be in the room is before you run out of time to be in the room." He said it to the room as the record, as the last word. She said that. He said, "He is in the room now." He said, "Tonight is the time." The episode aired 6 weeks later. The clip spread in the immediate, wide, deeply personal way of things that named something that many people had been inside. The first thing that traveled was the 12-second silence. The specific, complete. I have decided the silence is the right instrument quality of Steve Harvey standing at the center of his stage, saying nothing for 12 seconds after a man laughed at his wife's answer, while the board behind them showed number 1 with 44 responses. Several people said, I watched it 6 times. Several said, I have never seen a host use silence that way. Several said the silence was the whole response. The sentence came after, but the silence was the thing. It named the laugh without saying a word about it. It was the laugh receiving its consequence without language. Several people who ran rooms, teachers, managers, therapists, said they were going to use the silence deliberately the next time the laugh arrived in their room, not as punishment. As the accurate response, as the room refusing to let the laugh be the last word by simply outlasting it. The second was the sentence. You laughed at the woman who knows what people say right before they run out of time to say it. This traveled as a sentence in the way that specifically constructed sentences traveled when they were both factually precise and emotionally complete. Several people had palliative care workers, hospice workers, oncology nurses, social workers in their lives and families and said, I have been in the room when the person I love made the laugh and I did not have the sentence. I have it now. Several sent it. Several said, I sent it to my husband. He read it and he called me. Several said, I sent it to my wife. She said, that's it. That is what I have been trying to say for 12 years. Several said, it is going on the wall of the palliative care unit where I work. The third was Terrence's arrival at the true account. I have been laughing so I did not have to be in the room with what you know. This traveled in the specific. I recognized this quality among people who had been using humor as the instrument of avoidance, who had been making the person who carried difficult knowledge smaller so they did not have to carry it too. Several said, I do this. Several said, my partner does this. Several said, I sent my partner the clip and they watched it and said, is that what I do? And I said, yes, and they said, I did not know that was what I was doing, and I said, I know, and they said, I want to stop. And I said, I know you do, and we are figuring it out. Terrence heard all of it. The bereavement program, the families who came after, the specific accumulated everything Lorraine had been carrying for 19 years that he had been deflecting with the laugh. He heard it over the course of several evenings in October, one case at a time, the way Lorraine told things in the direct, warm, this is what was actually in the room way. He did not laugh. He was in the rooms. He asked questions. His questions were not always the right questions. She told him when they were not and why and what the right question was, and he listened, and he tried the right question, and she answered it. By the end of October, he had been in a year's worth of rooms he had been deflecting for 22 years. He said one evening, I don't know how you do it. He said it in the warm, direct, genuine, I am not performing this voice. She said, you stay in the room. He said, how? She said, you decide you are going to be there for the person and then you are there. He said, that sounds like what you do for everyone. She said, yes. He said, including me. She said, especially you. She said it in the warm, direct, this has always been true voice. She said, I have been staying in the room for you for 22 years. He said, I know. He said, I am going to stay in yours. She said, I know you are. She said, you are already in it. He said, yes. He said it simply. He said, I am in the room. She said, yes. She said, I know. She said, I have been waiting. There is a specific kind of dismissal that does not use words. Terrence used it for 22 years. Steve Harvey held the silence for 12 seconds. The sentence arrived. 44 people had said, what reminds me what matters is when someone says something they have never said before. Terrence said something he had never said before. He said it in the room. He is in the room now. The time to be in the room is before you run out of time. She has been in his room for 22 years. He is in hers now. Love is not the feeling. It is the practice of seeing a specific person clearly and saying what you see. He is practicing. The room held it. The room always holds what you bring to it. If this story reached you, if you have been using the laugh so you did not have to be in the room with what someone you love knows, or if you have been bringing something into your rooms and waiting for someone to stop laughing and be present for it, share this today. Leave a comment below and tell us what you are carrying from this story, because this community carries things together and your voice here matters. And subscribe right now if you are not already with us, because every single week we come back with stories exactly like this one. Stories about the 12-second silence. Stories about the woman who knows what people say right before they run out of time. And stories about the man who finally said the thing he had never said before. In the right room. While there was still time, we will see you in the next one.